Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We are going to be waiting 1 more minute until more people get connected. Excellent. All right, so thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Angela Ventura. I am the director of United Way of Broward County's Commission on Behavioral Health and Drug Prevention. First of all, thank you to United Way. Thank you to the members of the Community Response Team's Policy Work Group and to the Broward Behavioral Health Coalition for opening up the conversation about harm reduction and the importance of syringe services in our community. This event is for mature audiences only, and the target audience is the general public. All attendees can ask questions through the Q&A feature. On June 27, 2019, Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law the Infectious Disease Elimination Act that allows county commissions to authorize sterile needle and syringe exchange programs for people who inject drugs. Disease prevention must be the goal of every exchange program. It is also important to notice that syringe exchange programs in Florida cannot use state, county, or municipal funds to operate. The law requires that exchange programs be funded through grants and donations from private resources and funds. On December 5, 2019, Broward commissioners approved the program for Broward County. And Care Resource stepped up and will be operating the program here in the community. According to the CDC, syringe services programs have been proven to reduce the transmission of bloodborne diseases. Do not increase drug use, and actually they serve as a bridge to other health services, including Hep C and HIV testing and treatment and medication assisted treatment for opioid use disorder. Syringe services programs also save taxpayers thousands of dollars in healthcare costs brought about by drug use. A study published in 2014 showed that every dollar spent on clean syringes for syringe services programs saved at least $6 in medical costs for the treatment of HIV alone. On the other hand, these programs reduce the risks faced by law enforcement and first responders who are fighting the opioid crisis every day. Used needles are a major cause of bloodborne infectious diseases such as HIV, Hep B, Hep C, and such danger impacts those trying to enforce the law as much as those who are using drugs. Many studies across multiple states show that on average, approximately 1 in 3 police officers has suffered at least one accidental needle stick caused by IV drug users carrying used syringes. For every accidental needle stick, the cost to law enforcement agencies is great because they must seek medical attention, including multiple tests, antiretroviral drugs to combat potential HIV infections, and vaccination to work against potential Hep B infections, among other expenses. So again, thank you to the community response team for making this event possible, and very special thank you to Broward County Cultural Division, Director Phil Dunlap, and to Gary Smythe for providing the funds for the production of the film, and to all the actors, extras, volunteers, and agencies that contributed time, locations, refreshments, materials, knowledge, and talent to make this short film a reality. The film was produced in English and in Spanish, and we are so honored to have the producer, Tim Davies, here with us today. Tim Davies is a producer and the co-founder of Stone Circle Media. Hi, Tim, good afternoon.
Hi, Angela, thank you so much for having me.
Please tell us more about this wonderful production and about the very special guest that we have here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna start with a presentation of the film. I did have the honor of producing this film and working with a lot of the people who you're going to hear from today, and many more. This was truly a community effort to make this short film happen. So I'll talk more about it afterwards, about how it came to be, at least from my perspective as a producer and as an artist. I'm definitely not the expert in the room, but I am really excited to moderate today and honestly I've learned so much about what all of you do and about this community in the last several months, getting to be a part of this project and even projects in the future. So I'm here to learn with all the participants as well. So without further ado, I'd love to show the short film, and that will springboard the rest of our conversation, I think. So here we go.
As I said, sobriety is always the best option. But we do understand that not everyone is always in a place where they're ready for that. So I'm happy to talk about harm reduction techniques, if anyone here is interested in that information. Yes, sir.
Davies, I'm getting ready to start my 4-step with my sponsor. And I'm a little nervous about it. Having to write down my resentments, my fears.
Avenues of harm reduction, first and foremost, is education. Education on
I'm also in IOP classes.
I can see your faces.
You just made a $1.99.
Free Madonna, man.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Come back and see us again.
My name is Shay. I'm an addict, and I'm celebrating 1 month of being clean today.
I have to keep trying it, and I think Shay told me it works if you work it. So I want it to work. I need it to work. So yeah.
So I'm happy to talk about harm reduction techniques, if anyone here is interested in that information.
It's awful. I'm going far from here. There used to be so many nice things here, and now it's just filled with drug addicts.
I know. My cousin Lily, she moved here a few years ago. It was super nice, and that's why I moved here.
Oh, it's very nice. No, I'm done with this place.
All right. There's not an easy way to transition out of that because it is a pretty heavy ending there. But this is going to orient our conversation and our discussion today. So thank you for watching that, everyone. Just a little bit of background about that film that you just watched. That was back in, I want to say November or October of last year, 2020. So almost a year ago, I got a call from Phil Dunlap over at the Broward County Cultural Division. And he told me that United Way of Broward was looking to do a video to address various topics related to substance use disorder and recovery, and one of them being a safe syringe exchange program. So that was the topic that we got connected to United Way on. Angela was really the project coordinator, coordinating all these different organizations and services, really the hub of communication to make this happen. But that launched a writing process that went on for a couple months with a group of artists who I had the pleasure of working with, writers and actors and filmmakers who all had a piece on the artistic side of making this happen, and then also getting to work with the various community organizations who you'll hear more from today. So this was truly a community collaboration, bringing together those who work in the public health sector and local Broward County, South Florida-based artists, actors, directors, and filmmakers. So it was really an honor to be able to tell this story and to make something. As an artist and producer, I always love being able to make something that has a direct impact. Oftentimes we're dealing with abstract ideas and emotions, but to tell a story that has direct impact, that is telling a story that needs to be told and needs to be understood more fully by our community was such an honor. So I will stop talking about that for now. I'm sure we'll talk more about the film as we get going, but I do want to introduce our panelists today. So I'll ask each of them, we'll just go down the line. I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves, to share with us what they do, and talk about how they got involved in this project. And I want to start with Gary Smythe, who I want to thank Gary again for providing half the funding for this project, really coming through to make it be something that we could even make. So thank you so much, Gary, and go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
Well, first I want to say, Tim, that you and your team did a phenomenal job with the production of the film and taking our vision and making it a hopefully powerful message for people that are watching it. I'm very proud of it, and thank you for making us proud. Very talented group of people. So my name is Gary Smythe. My role in this is I am the chair of the Community Response Team Public Policy Division. One of our objectives was to inform the public about what a safe syringe exchange program is. And we thought that the best way to do that would be to demonstrate it through a film. And that's kind of what my role was at the beginning. And Tim took it from there. My day job, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at 5th Street Counseling Center.
Great, thank you so much, Gary. We're excited to have you on the panel today. Next, I want to introduce Kathy Hurt, and Kathy played an amazing part in making this film happen as well, from locations to feeding the cast and crew every day, coordinating that. So Kathy, go ahead and tell us, introduce yourself and what you do and how you got involved in this.
So thank you, Tim, and thank you, United Way, for being a thought leader in providing this education. My name is Kathy Hurt, and I am the Community Impact Director for FAG Health. We are a for-profit behavioral health center in Deerfield Beach, and we focus on servicing first responders and frontline workers and their family, and doing neurotherapy and neuro research. And just all of the pieces that came together for this have been amazing, and I look forward to talking about it a little further as we continue our discussion.
Great, thank you so much, Kathy. Next, I want to introduce Dr. Thomas Smith. Dr. Smith and I are actually going to be working together on a follow-up project, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit today as well. But Dr. Smith, go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
Yes, thanks, Tim. My name is Dr. Thomas Smith. I am the Director of Behavioral Health at Care Resource. And first, I have to give thanks to Dr. Cheryl Zayas, who is our medical director. This whole project, as far as a syringe exchange for Care Resource, was her idea, and said, let's do this. This is great. That's a fantastic idea. And how do we make this happen? So it was her vision to say, okay, let's get the ball rolling. And we really worked closely with her and with everyone to get this program off the ground and running. I mean, my role and my passion has always been to work with, I've worked in the HIV field for 25 years, and I've worked with counseling and substance abuse and mental health disorders for many years. We have a large medication-assisted treatment program and a large substance abuse and substance use disorder and outreach program at Care Resource. And this is the next step. We're a not-for-profit federally qualified health center. And this is really the next step in our mission and our vision to be able to provide more services. The syringe exchange program and all the services we offer are really right in line with that, to be able to, reach more people that are underserved and don't have the finances or the ability to seek treatment elsewhere. So I'm very glad to be here, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. And last, I want to introduce someone who I've just recently gotten to know, who's going to be helping us tomorrow on our production that we'll talk more about later. I want to introduce Emmy Martinez, who also works with Dr. Smith at Care Resource.
Hi, I'm Emmy Martinez. I am the manager for the Safe Syringe Exchange program out of Care Resource. I want to thank all of you for having us here today for this panel and presentation of the film. I have been working in harm reduction for about 30 years now, and I'm full of glee to be able to continue where I began my career. So I just want to thank everyone who's participating for your interest. It shows a lot, and I want to thank everyone who is present here in the panel for just having us and giving us this opportunity.
Great, thank you so much, Emmy. So let's jump right in with some essential questions that I think are going to help move this discussion along. I'm going to start with Emmy being the boots on the ground person for this type of program, for a safe syringe exchange. Emmy, what is, because I think in the film it's a little bit, it could be a little bit unclear because it is artistic, but what is a safe syringe exchange program? What is a needle exchange program? And I'd love for you to touch on the language of that too. Why do we use certain words versus other words? But explain to us what this is.
Syringe exchange program is somewhere where someone who's using substances or drugs that they inject illegally, right? It gives them the ability to come in and get new needles from us. They give us their used ones, we give them new ones. We give them Narcan for overdose prevention. We give them all the works that they need in order to stay safe. And it's all done anonymously as per law. It's a place where they could come and get the services they need. We refer them out for detox when they're ready. We refer them out for medical services when they're ready, mental health services when they're ready. If someone were to test HIV positive, we would go ahead and refer them out for treatment with a medical doctor. And lingo works are all the equipment that are used when someone is getting ready to inject, whether it's, the needle, the cookers, the cottons, the tourniquets, the sterile water, everything that a person needs to use to inject, and we provide it so they can do so safely.
Great, thank you so much, Emmy. So following up on that, I want to jump to Gary really quick. Should people in Broward and our community be concerned that a program like this actually encourages drug use? Since, like Emmy just said, you are providing the tools to safely inject drugs. Doesn't this encourage drug use?
So that's a great question, Tim, and that's certainly for someone who's not familiar with substance use disorders, that would be sort of a go-to. Sounds like, so it's counterintuitive. However, the more you know about substance use disorder and you start with knowing that it's a disease and that this is one of the ways in which we can manage the disease and minimize other negative health impacts of using drugs, such as infection related to HIV, hepatitis B or C. And it is an opportunity for us to be able to be in the community where the folks with substance use disorders are active and to provide them a link to the community should they want other services such as medical services, rehabilitation services. For example, if they have an untreated condition, condom distribution, all kinds of other things come along, and those people are now connected to their community and they don't feel lost and alone just because they have a disease that they're not entirely ready, maybe, to become abstinent. In the meantime, we can help them using safely. So I hope that makes it a little more clear as to why it might seem counterintuitive from the outset.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an initial concern to address, definitely. And I know as well, you talk about those services that a program like this can connect people to who are often completely cut off from healthcare. if this gives them an environment to feel safe, to feel that there's trust, all those things you listed. But I think we mentioned earlier as well that COVID vaccines can be distributed through this as well, which is very relevant right now.
Right.
How
So
are these,
for a population that's isolated, this
Yeah.
is an entree back
Exactly.
into the community.
how are these programs, and how is the program that is coming to Broward that we'll talk about as well? How are these programs funded? Who's paying for them? Because again, as a controversial topic, I can hear people saying, well, I don't want my tax dollars go into something like this to, allowing people to keep using drugs. That is one of those things that you just addressed that we have to educate the public on. But how are these programs funded specifically?
So the state has mandated that no tax dollars in any way, shape, or form, state, federal, county, or city, can be used to support this program. Therefore, the program's financial support comes from the community. In our case, Care Resource has stepped up as an agency to take on this project, which is amazing. They have an amazing donor base as well that believes in their work. They are working together to fund this, and the United Way has stepped up and said, this is a valuable asset to our community, and we would like to contribute it as well. So no taxpayer dollars, primarily Care Resource and United Way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. I want to jump to Dr. Smith, and let's talk about Broward specifically. Why is a safe syringe exchange program important in Broward?
I think if you look at, even from the video that we watched and what you hear on the news and the different programs that are out there, there's an increasing number of people that are overdosing from drugs. And we know that the opioid epidemic is on the streets. The drugs that are out there are deadly. They're fatal. So this is so important for us to be able to reach and get out to the population and to address that. There's a 30% increase in overdoses from last year to this across the country. And Broward County is not exempt from that. And when we take a look at Broward County, we take a look at all of the services that are provided. There's some incredible providers in the county that provide drug treatment services. They're able to provide detox, a full continuum of care, medical care for HIV. There's outreach and education, but with this population, there is a lot of stigma and marginalization that comes with this population. So what happens is the participants or the individuals that need care usually find care when it's a crisis, when it's emergency, whether they've just tested positive for HIV or they've developed symptoms for HIV or hepatitis, and they end up in the emergency room, or they have an abscess or an infection that is potentially fatal to them, and they end up in the emergency room. So that's a huge cost and a hit to the taxpayers' dollars when we look at it that way. Or the other way that they end up is with with an overdose. And if they end up in an emergency room, usually what it is okay, we treat you real quick and we get you back out on the street. That doesn't solve the problem. That just puts a Band-Aid on it for the period of time. So a syringe service program is, and that kind of care is reactive rather than proactive. The syringe services programs actually become a proactive approach to really bridge that gap in between of all the services that are available in Broward County. How do we reach the population that really needs them, that feels stigmatized, that doesn't feel like walking through the front door to ask for help? So that really helps to bridge that gap in that way. And again, with the COVID vaccines, we can get vaccines out to people. We can be preventative and make sure that these things are put in place. We do the HIV testing and the hepatitis screening on the mobile unit when we go out. So if someone does test positive, we can link them immediately to a medical provider right there and then to start their treatment. That's going to, and of course, giving the clean syringes or the unused syringes, and also like sterile water to use, so that they're safer and that less infections will happen because of that. And again, if we look at one of the other important pieces of this is we get Narcan out into the streets, which is a drug that reverses overdoses. And if you want to look at, we always talk about first responders. In this case, with participants that are actively using drugs, the first responders are those participants to an overdose, or the family members, or the friends, or the community that's surrounding and using with them. So our goal is to make sure that they have the tools to actually reverse the overdose while they're calling the first responders that we know, that the EMTs and the medical personnel that show up, the law enforcement that show up. But right now, we want to have that in their hands. And I met with a client just recently, and he said he's used Narcan on people 40 different times. That's amazing. So if we can, he's now clean and he's in recovery, but that we need to, that's another super important approach that we would rather, if we can save someone's life, there's the opportunity and there's the chance that they will find recovery and they will find help down the road. And again, another piece is that we get a pulse so much going on in the community. So Emmy has worked in Miami-Dade in the Idea Exchange program there. And you get to know the participants and develop the trust and know what's happening. You know that if there's bad drugs that are out there, you can communicate that to people. You get feedback, and we begin to, again, what I said before, is bridge that gap. So we have information that we can kind of, those emerging trends as they come up, we know what's happening. We know if it's a hotspot area that everyone is tested positive for HIV all of a sudden. We need to get in there and address that for the benefit of those individuals, for the benefit of the community, and the benefit, of course, if you look at it just as solely a cost savings benefit, we don't want people to become HIV positive. It costs much more money to take care of someone that's HIV positive than it is to keep them safe through a syringe exchange. What we will also be doing is the SPOT, which we'll talk about later, which is our syringe exchange program, is a special purpose outreach team. And that really is, speaks the name. We're going out to the outreach to make sure we have that linkage to care and all of the services that we're able to provide. And just to highlight one last thing, remember, this is, again, there's no funds. So we are relying on donations. We're relying on grants and United Way. And Gilead we're working with Gilead to provide also some funding to be able to provide for staffing, to be able to staff the unit. But it's essential and so important for Broward County that we respond. And this is happening in other counties and in Miami-Dade, and had a great success rate. It also helps law enforcement so that we're able to maybe reduce those needle sticks. We're able to clean up the areas. We're able to clean up the community. So if someone goes to a park and sees a needle on the ground, a little kid doesn't go over and pick it up and have a needle stick. So there's many different benefits, but those are just a few.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. And I did want to mention, Beatrice, I see your question in the comments there. We're going to get through a few more questions, and then we should have time at the end to go through the Q&A. So if you have a question on anything, drop it in the Q&A. I'm fine if you drop it in the chat as well, because we can toggle there. But I wanted to just touch on something that you mentioned, Dr. Smith. It reminded me of, I did a workshop a couple of years ago, and there was this story that I will never forget, and I might be butchering it. So if someone knows it, I'm sorry, but it's a bit of a parable. But it's this idea that this village was right next to a river, and every day a baby would float down the river, and someone from the village would swim out and grab the baby and bring him in. And the next day, 5 babies came down the river, and the community got together and they went out and they saved the babies, and they brought them together. And this happened day after day after day after day. Until finally someone was like, someone needs to walk up the river and find out where these babies are coming from. Yeah. And so just that idea of like having programs that are not Band-Aid focused, but are actually addressing the root, addressing the problem, bridging the gap, finding ways to reduce harm, I think is just really effective. And the way, when we talk about solving social issues and economic issues and health issues, sometimes addressing the root, it's not flashy, it's not attractive, it's hard to sell, it's hard to get donations for, but it is the right thing to do. So I think being able to tell stories like we did with this film, and just having people advocate for that kind of approach to the root is really important. One other question for you, Dr. Smith, is just getting a little bit more into the psychology of addiction, I suppose. Why do you think it's important to help people who are in these positions when, from a lot of people's perspective, it's their choice. It's their choice to abuse or use drugs? Why should we help people as a community?
Yeah. I think it goes back. Gary had mentioned something before. As we see that addiction, the more that we know this is a disease. This is a brain disease, and something's going on where there is that desire, and we could have a whole day symposium on addiction and what's happening. But there's that compulsion to be able to use, and we need to create that opportunity for somebody to bridge that gap to be able to get into care. Because if we can reduce that addiction, that compulsion, then we're able to begin to work on the socioeconomic thing. We're going to be able to work on the psychological issues, to develop the coping skills, and to really develop a strong, sustainable life that does not need the drugs that they're using, and the addiction now no longer is activating that part of their brain that's saying compulsion. They're able to develop those skills and having a more quality of life. And we've seen it happen over and over and over again. There is great success with that. With medication-assisted treatment, we can get people into medication-assisted treatment while we give them the coping skills and the counseling that they need so that they can get off of that, or they may stay on that, but at least they have a strong quality of life that has a support system. So often right now in the communities that we're reaching out to, the support system, they have an incredible support system. It's just a support system that continues to support their behaviors that are causing or contributing to the addiction and the other life issues that are preventing them from moving past that. So
yeah, thank you for addressing that. I want to jump to Kathy and talk a little bit more about the film, about this project. So Kathy, how did the idea for Two Paths, for this short film come up? I shared a little bit from the artist perspective, but how about from the community, the organizations that are addressing this issue? What was your perspective and how this project came to be?
Well, how it came to be was I'm on the community response team, and I am on the public policy team with Gary and a few other people. And what we were tasked with doing was to choose 3 priorities. And it was needle exchange, tobacco 21, and sober home regulation. And we decided as a group that the needle exchange was going to be our first priority. And we're like, oh my gosh, what do we do in addressing such a controversial subject to not further to divide, but to maybe educate in a more effective way? And so we were like, well, maybe a commercial, maybe a video, maybe this or that. And I'm like, and then it was, oh, the cost is going to just be way too much. And I said, well, let's look into it. So I had been connected with Phil Dunlap, the executive director of the cultural division for Broward County, and he graciously scholarshiped several dollars, and then Gary stepped up, and we stepped up with a number of in-kind donations, and it started to happen. And this was not taken lightly. We had many, many meetings, many discussions. It truly was a village that put this together. We had a whole, the screen was filled up when we were meeting with all of us to decide how this would look, what would the research be. And as you can see, it was an amazing finished product that was done. I am just, every time I see it, it just makes me want to cry with the seeing both sides of this story and the reality of it.
Yeah, I think, again, just kind of harping on what I said earlier, getting to see those working in public health and artists from our community coming together. And I think part of the gap that we have to bridge is artists are often asking questions. We don't want to give firm answers. It's a little more about the feeling and the emotion, and it's abstract. And from the public health side, but what's the data? How do we solve the problem? It's a little more of a scientific approach. So finding the balance of that and the middle ground was really what that, I want to say it was a 2 or 3 month writing process as we, pitched a few concepts, then we narrowed down to this idea. Then we went through multiple drafts to make sure we were addressing things in a coherent way, but also in a respectful way, honoring the community's story that we were telling, but being clear about the issues we were addressing, but not sacrificing artistic integrity. It was just like a lot of push and pull, but I think we arrived at something that was, you know, meaningful and powerful on all sides of that, which was just very exciting for me as a producer. Talk about, Kathy, a little bit the intended audience for this. This is our first time premiering this film. Now what do we do with it? Who should see this? Yeah,
that's a great question, Tim. It's like, okay, now that we have this Academy Award winning worthy production, what do we do with it? And it's many give and takes back and forth with some of the content, like it maybe was not touching on all of the true feelings that an addicted person is going through. And we said, well, the intended audience is the general public. It's going to be our government community, like the League of Cities, the Broward Alliance, other law enforcement agencies, the hospitals. So these are people who they're not like we are, where we see this almost on a daily basis. They hear about it on the news, like maybe, a famous movie star overdosed, or they see it with a person getting arrested for a crime. So we felt the final script write-up that you did, Tim, was addressing all the points to get to our intended audience, which is basically our global community.
Yeah, and that's something when you're, from our end, when you're telling a story, especially when you're trying to tell a story in 7 or 8 minutes, you can't do justice to a human life. No story can. No, Tolstoy's novels can't do justice to the complexity of being a human being. But you can be accurate. You can grab specific parts and moments of it. And ultimately, when we're talking about the audience being the general public, just the step of humanizing this issue. So it's not just a headline. So it's not just, the two women in the film who represent sort of that negative community reaction to just like not having compassion, like Emmy mentioned earlier, for people who have this disease. A story like this ideally creates that compassion, creates that empathy, which from the storytelling side, that's why we do what we do. We're trying to help people feel something, to help people get outside of themselves a little bit and experience some empathy for people who are going through something that they haven't gone through. So I hope that's what this film did. I want to take it to the group, and I think probably Emmy and Dr. Smith can address this a little bit. One of the things that was amazing for me is we shot this back in April, and then we had a post-production process, and we did a Spanish version as well that we mentioned, and went back and forth on the edits and the captions and subtitles. And then I got a call from Care Resource that said, hey, we are now starting a safe syringe program in Broward called The Spot, which you can see on Emmy's screen. And we want to continue telling Shay's story in another video. So that's what we actually go into production for tomorrow, is a part 2 to this story, which the Care Resource team will premiere at the end of the month. So it's a pretty quick production turnaround. But it was incredible to me to see that we made something. We hadn't even released it yet, and there was already movement in Broward to address this issue. So tell us a little bit about these next steps and The Spot, and how this group of people is addressing this issue in our community.
I think one of the interesting things, when Angela, I met with Angela back several weeks ago, and I saw the final version of this film, and then we continued on in a meeting afterwards. But in the first 7 minutes of the meeting, she brought me to tears, and it really made an impact on me, and said, now how am I supposed to have a meeting to have a conversation? Because it really does make such an impact to say, this is the reality. This is what's happening. And in what better way to say, okay, we saw, I like how the film was done, because the very beginning of it showed the great happy we live, skip off into happiness to the reality, and sometimes, and it really, that juxtapose helped to show that. We want to show that next step, and guess what? In response to that, what are we doing? how do we, how do we serve the people that this is going through? How do we change some of those perspectives? How do we make that happen? And as you know, we talked the SPOT is going to do that. That's the special purpose outreach team. We're out there to actually do that. And the film tomorrow is a way to feature that and to let them know this is a service that's available. And the intended audience in that, again, is the general public, but it's also to be used for like to promote and let people know what's available and what we look like and where we're going to be and the services that we are going to provide in that sense.
Yeah, thank you.
If I can just answer one question, there was a question that was in from Beatrice that was in there.
Yes.
Like, what's the plan to address socioeconomic determinants of health, such as housing? And as I mentioned early on, we have, there's so many great resources in Broward County for treatment and for linkage. And that's our hope, is that we begin to plant those seeds and we can develop those relationships with people to get them into treatment and link them to those many services. And for instance, like at Care Resource through BBHC and through different grants, we're able to get them temporary housing while we're getting them medication assisted treatments. They get their medical care, they get the counseling services, they'll get the medication, and we can link them to housing services for a period of time. We can work with them to get the skills that they need for jobs, their resumes prepared, and family therapy, and then get them right into, help them to find jobs so they become sustainable. So there is that continuum of care that's available. It's just getting them from point A to point B. So, and that's where that linkage, and this is a perfect opportunity for us to do that, to say, what is it that you want? We're meeting you where you are. Let's try to help you move you along to meet all of that. Sorry, I just saw that question, so I wanted to answer that.
No, thank you for addressing that. Yeah, I appreciate that. I do want to jump to Emmy really quick, and I know that I believe that the SPOT is currently being wrapped. So like this is very, very new, still in its infant stages of being deployed in our community. But Emmy, can you explain a little bit about how the SPOT will work, the process, I guess?
Well, like you see behind me, there's a truck. So right now it's actually finishing up. They're wrapping it as we speak. What we're going to do is we're going to go out to different sectors of Broward County where there are known to be people that use drugs, right? So we're going to be out there. We're going to be doing a lot of canvassing. We're going to be backpacking. What's backpacking? We take backpacks and we fill them up with condoms and Narcan, and we walk to see who we find. It's one of the things I look forward definitely to working with Susan's team on with their peers. So we're going to be out there. We're going to have a van full of needles, a van full of works, a van full of Narcan and HIV and hepatitis C test kits. Once a person's ready to come into the truck, we will go ahead and take the needles that they have, because again, it's an exchange, not access. Exchange means they have to give us something in order to get something. So they can't just show up and say, I don't have any needles, I need needles. Can't do that, it's against the law. But we will be able to test them for HIV and hepatitis C anonymously. The whole process is anonymous. We do create unique identifiers for them. We will have them sitting in the truck. It'll be air conditioned. We'll give them water, a snack if we have it. Sometimes it's the only fresh or cool water and the only snack they might have had that day or for a few days. So it's very important for us to have that with us on the truck. We're going to give them the needles that they need. We're going to give them all the works that they need. We're going to give them all the Narcan that they ask for. Because again, like Tom said earlier, we've had participants that say, I've saved so many lives. I walk around very proud with the fact that I've Narcaned 8 people under different overpasses, and I'm very happy about that. And then they come and tell me, well, I did 100, right? So yeah, so it's one of those things, right? We're going to give them everything they need to stay safe, which at the same time empowers that person, right? It's going to be a space that's non-judgmental, that's compassionate, that's patient, that's going to be maybe one of the few times in that day that they could decompress for a few minutes, right? And then we're going to be able to send them on their way till we see them the following week or, a couple of days later. And again, the point for us is stay alive. right? Stay alive till you're ready. Once they're ready for detox, once they're ready for any kind of treatment, once they're ready, period, we'll be able to refer them to the appropriate place where they're, where they're going to get the help that they need.
So we did have a question come in, Emmy, from Evan Taylor. And the question is, if someone came empty-handed, would you refer them anywhere else to get a clean needle?
There's nowhere else to go, right? They'd have to go to Dade County, but they would get the same exact response that I was going to give them. Right there and then I would probably tell them, look and see if they can go to a pharmacy and buy one, or where's the needle they used that morning. Go get it and come back with it. Because at the end of the day, we work within the parameters of the law. So it's something that we have to do. And I will explain to them that, we can't, risk the loss of a program because we want to give someone a needle that they weren't prepared for. But we make sure that that's something that we let people know on a regular basis. They have to bring back their needles, and they have to have a needle in order to exchange and enroll in the program.
Great, thank you. So opening it up to everyone a little bit, I think just in terms of like, where do we go from here? What are things that the folks who are on this call right now, on this Zoom right now, what can we do as a community, whether that's other organizations who are watching or just, myself kind of just as a layperson in this field, what can we do to advocate for safe syringe programs and advocate for these other programs that are coming out to address this issue?
So Tim, if I can take a swipe at that, certainly Emmy joining up with Susan Nayamora's team from South Florida Wellness Network is a fantastic combination to reach the people that need the help the most. And I think one of the things that we have to talk about, and Emmy touched on this, and that is to respect the rights of those people who use drugs. Their human rights. They deserve to be treated with respect and with dignity. And I know that the team at Care Resource is clearly on top of that. And I know that Susan's team at South Florida Wellness Network, I know they understand that. And that's probably a very difficult concept for those people that are not in our industry and see as much as we do or have as much exposure to information as we do, to understand that, to say these are not aliens. This is somebody's brother, sister, son, uncle, nephew. This is somebody's partner. They're humans and they have a disease, and that does not exclude them from being helped.
Just to kind of go a little bit on what Gary just said, I've never met anyone with a substance use disorder that's an IV drug user that said, this is what I wanted to be when I grew up. This is where they ended up. It's not where they want to stay. It's not where they want to be. It just happens to be where they are now. But this wasn't like, oh, this is my choice. This is my life's goal is I'm going to do this. So when they're ready and when we built that relationship and there's enough trust and there's enough help and opportunity, we can begin to help. But to force somebody and say, okay, we're not going to treat you because this is your choice. I don't think it's their choice to use rainwater as their water to inject drugs with. I mean, we need to be aware of that. And you're right, they need to be treated with absolute dignity and compassion. And how do we do that all encompassing?
Yeah, that is something that anyone can do when this issue comes up, when people in your family or in your friend group are talking about addiction. Advocate for the people who have this disease rather than stay quiet or rather than agree with harmful opinions, because ultimately the language we use and the beliefs we have lead to negative actions. I think we have time for one more question probably before Angela wraps us up. There's a good question here from Coral Cohen that I wanted to throw out. And it's, how does anonymous HIV/bloodborne disease testing work? Isn't it required from the public health side to report and track such diagnoses?
Yes. Yes, it works. Okay, so the health department, the state of Florida requires confidential HIV counseling and testing. As far as the law for the syringe exchange program, it is an anonymous program for the participants. In doing so, there's a meeting point that we came to with the state health department where they have allowed syringe exchange programs to provide anonymous testing to their participants only. That's how that comes to work. Once someone does test, if someone tests reactive or positive for HIV, then they will, or a hepatitis C, we turn that into a confidential test. We test them again for confirmation in a confidential manner that's separate, that those files are kept separate from the syringe exchange program files. Then that person is again referred for services as they need it. And that record, again, is separate from the syringe exchange filing system and records because of the fact that people don't really need to know that someone's exchanging needles. So it keeps them feeling safe, it keeps them feeling protected, it keeps them going through the process in a way that they can trust us.
Yeah, that confidentiality is really important. I think we're ready to wrap up here. The last thing that I wanted to mention, I just found out a couple days ago in terms of getting the word about this out and advocating for this. The cultural division, Phil Dunlap's team, ended up sharing this film with the folks at the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival, Gregory Von Hausch over there, and they're actually going to screen this film at the film festival this November. So this will be a part of an international, a 30-year plus international film festival. I don't even think I told anyone here about that yet. I didn't even know that was happening. We didn't submit it. It was submitted on our behalf, but that's something that's really exciting just in terms of telling the story and getting the information out there is a really cool thing. So if any of you out there are FLIF attenders or want to come check out the film festival, we'll be there in November with the film as well. With that, I do want to thank all of our panelists again for being here. Thank you for inviting me, a film and theater producer, into your community to help tell this story. It's been such an honor, and I look forward to continuing to do that tomorrow, in fact. But thank you all again for your wisdom and for your care on this issue, and for the empathy that you have for those in our community who have this disease, and finding ways to address the root issue. It's amazing to be a part of it. So with that, I turn it over to Angela, and thank you all for having all of us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, team, for all your talent producing this powerful film and moderating this event. Oh my goodness. Thank you also to the panelists for sharing your knowledge, enlightening all of us and teaching all of us the path to truly help our community, specifically people with substance use disorders. They are part of our community, and we must embrace them with services and with all the help that we can. So the video is already in YouTube, so please feel free to share it. I already put it on the chat, so the link is there, and we'll be sending it to all of you via email. Also, please, you can join our CRT meetings. The meeting actually is tomorrow at 9 in the morning. All the information is on our website, drugfreebroward.org. These meetings are virtual, and everyone is welcome in the community to attend these meetings. And we are already talking about some other videos to go deep on this issue, because we truly think that this is a great way to make a difference. So again, thank you all. Thank you, United Way. Thank you, Gary. And then hope to see you soon. See you all of you soon.
Thank you, Angela, for all your behind the scenes work.
Absolutely.
Literally.
Yes. All of you guys are an inspiration for all of this. So
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.